Welcome, everyone. This is Rob's School of Music Interviews. And today we are featuring incredible rock star authors of this incredible book, Tom Beaujour Richard Bienstock. Hello, gentlemen, and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
100%. Let me tell you, when I first found out about this book, which I just think is so freaking cool, I was like, how deep is this going to go? And you guys get so much information and just the stories jumping from person to person to person. I have so many questions. So thank you so much for being here. So we're just meeting each other. My name is Rob. I have a music school in Suffern, New York, and we teach virtually around the country. And once the pandemic hit, we moved everything online, just flying by the seat of our pants. And we're lucky to be able to do over 7,000 virtual lessons prior to reopening in person back in June. And over the course of that period, I started doing these interviews, and, I just feel so lucky to be able to talk to you guys because I'm an avid reader, and something that took my mind off the chaos of what's been going on in the world was a book like this one. So thank you.
Awesome. Hey, can I ask you one quick question before we start?
Yes.
Because I'm a gear freak. Is that a divided by 13 head that I see in the right there?
It is. And I bought it from Richard Fortis after I interviewed him on this very show.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Asked and answered. Wow. That's
and
cool.
It is absolutely killer. I have an addiction to gear, and it's horrible, but I justify it because I say, well, I'm a musician and I'm a music teacher. So music comes in both those worlds. So I just tell my girlfriend it's part of my job. They're write-offs.
Exactly. It's all tax write-off.
Yeah. So, you guys, between the Revolver magazine and Billboard and Spin and Guitar World, there's such a rich history of contributing to the lexicon of cool music stuff. How did you guys get started, writing and that kind of stuff?
Well, for me, I started my career at Guitar World, as Tom did, but I started a few years after him. I actually came in as an intern in the late 90s, which is when I met Tom. Without going through everything, that's kind of where it started, and then spending a lot of years there just as an editor and writer in different capacities, and then from there branching out to do, writing for other places and books and things like that, and just, striking up a real relationship with Tom right from the beginning, mostly over the music that's in this book. It's just something we both grew up with and we both have a deep passion for, and talking over the years about doing a book like this, and then, and this is going back over a decade, and then finally, deciding to dive in and get it done. And here we are.
Awesome. I love the way the book is formatted, just a compilation of all these different quotes from different people in interviews. How long did it take to pull together so many different incredible musicians?
It was from the very start to when we kind of wrapped it, about 3.5, almost 4 years.
Wow.
From the very first interview. There was about a year before we even had a book deal. So there was a year of putting together something where we could convince a publisher that this was a good idea. And yeah, it took a long time because, we interviewed over 200 people. We obviously both have other jobs. This wasn't a full-time, job. And some people took a really long time to track down. I think I have 18 months worth of emails with Sebastian Bach's management or something, and we understood, we're asking people to give us their time. We're not remunerating them, and people more or less want to talk about this stuff. As the book got closer to being done and the word was out that we were real fans of this stuff and knew what we were talking about, it got easier because, as you can see from all these bands touring together, these people all know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a lot of good referrals, and, Jeff LaBar, RIP, told Fred Corey, this guy's cool. And then, and Cinderella. And so it starts to roll like that. And also it's easier once you can say that you've got a book deal with St. Martin's Press, and then people are like, okay, this was actually worth my time. But it was a lot of interviews, a lot of transcribing interviews, and for top to bottom 4 years.
That's awesome. That's the dedication to telling the story. I mean, it's clear. How do you, so when you're interviewing these various musicians, is there a narrative that you're trying to put together? Or are you literally like, okay, well, Sebastian Bach talked about something, and then the guys in Rat talked about something. Okay, that's the same story and it connects. How do you do that?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like we went into it knowing certain points we had to hit on, and also the story that we wanted to tell, just from, again, like our love of it and being like, okay, well, what do people know about this? What do they not know about it? What do they understand about it? What should they understand about it? But beyond that, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of like one person says one thing, and it could just be the slightest sort of offhand comment, but you're like, that's interesting. And then you talk to 5 other people about that, and all of a sudden you have this incredible story that you not only didn't think was going to be a part of the book, like you never knew it existed. I mean, a good example, there's a whole chapter dedicated to the recording of Dokken's Tooth and Nail. A great chapter in the book. It was actually one of the sample chapters we used to sell the book to a publisher. You know, needless to say, we did not go into this book, you know, mapping out like, okay, we've talked about the Sunset Strip and, you know, Moscow Peace Festival and X, Y, and Z. And oh yeah, and we really have to hone in on the recording of Tooth and Nail. Like that is not something that we ever considered. But, you know, I think Tom had interviewed Tom Werman, the producer, about everything he's worked on, which was basically like every big 80s record, more or less. And he had one offhand comment about doing that record and some hijinks in the studio. That was really bizarre. And so from there, it's like, well, you talk to George Lynch and you talk to Wild Mick Brown and you talk to Don Dokken, and all of a sudden you have this crazy story unfold that becomes its own chapter in the book. So yeah, to answer your question, I mean, we kind of had a rough idea of what the arc was going to be, but we also we weren't afraid to let whatever the people were telling us lead us to, you know, places we never expected to go.
See, that's why I thought it was extra cool. I mean, I am a 80s rock guy. I grew up too young to experience it in the heyday, but when I was in high school, Behind the Music was on TV and it was feeding me all these amazing bands, and that's when I was coming up as a guitarist. So I was like, holy crap, like I'm in an age of Korn and Limp Bizkit, which is cool in its own thing, but I'm like, whoa, solos and showmanship and just rock stars. And I loved how there's so many things in here. I'm like, oh my God, like it's so deep and you get so to such specific things, and it makes you feel like you're there and living it and a part of it. And that's just incredible. What's up?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
No. Please go ahead. Please.
I was going to say, you know, were there particular bands or a show or something each of you guys experienced growing up where you're like, oh man, music, like I want music to be a huge part of my life professionally?
I mean, both of us were aspiring musicians. Both Rich and I was in a band in my 20s that, you know, had a small indie. We were on the same label as like that punk band, the Lunatics, and a couple of other bands, this label called Go Kart. So, you know, and we were trying to make it, and we had a manager, and Rich was in, you know, some bands that could like pack Irving Plaza in New York City. And like, so we were both guys who grew up wanting to be these guys in a lot of ways. Me probably more than Rich because I'm older. So like for me, I had already been into music, but there was something about, and I was already into Cheap Trick, and I knew a lot about and into punk rock and hardcore, but there was something about when Poison's Talk Dirty to Me video came out, and like I loved the song because it sounded like a Cheap Trick song, and the first 10 seconds where CeCe DeVille is sitting there and there's a semi truck behind him, and you know, we learned in the book that at this point the band was broke, probably half of those weren't his guitars, but you see right behind him a semi with like BC Riches and Jacksons all the way down the semi, like on stands. And then he's jumping around and he's throwing them in the video and they're having so much fun. And like that went into my brain like Luke's missiles in Star Wars, like when they go into the Death Star exhausting. It was just like, shoo! And like I was like, that that is what I want, like to be that psyched and having that much fun on stage and playing not metal really, but like more like really awesome power pop with guitar solos. That really marked me. I mean, I don't know if I really wanted to be, I was also into a lot of indie rock and stuff, but I know that that was like this moment, like this aspirational moment where I was like this, like where I was hooked. Like, I'm like, that is my trajectory. You know, that didn't exactly work out, but so it goes. But like, so it really did this music and the guitar players in particular of this music, like Vito Bratta, Warren G. Martini, like guys people have never even heard of, like Derek Frigo from Enough Is Enough. Like the guitar playing in this music to me was what just completely captured my imagination and my mind.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Rich, what was it for you?
Well, like Tom said, I mean, I started out, I believed in my deepest heart of hearts that I was going to be a rock star one of these days, and played in bands around New York. You know, I probably played in bands that leaned a little bit more toward the type of thing that's in the book, which I don't know is necessarily a good thing, because this is like early 2000s New York. You know, where it's like Strokes and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and all that stuff, and I'm in like, you know, stacked heels with a feather boa and like eyeliner on. So dude, needless to say,
I get
yeah. Well,
that's
why we're sitting here, you know. So it wasn't the time for it, but you know, but I've played in bands like we've played with, like, you know, Twisted Sister and with Bret Michaels and all that kind of stuff. So like, you know, more in that world. You know, and just the music thing. I mean, I've kind of became a writer by default. I think it was more just like, well, if I'm going to write about music, it's okay, but I'm not going to write about, you know, cooking or something else like that. So, and as far as getting into this music, just like Tom with Talk Dirty to Me, for me, it was the Motley Crue Looks to Kill video. And like, I was 7 at the time, but I had an older brother. So I was already like really into music and kind of, you know, had MTV and knew what was going on and all that. But seeing that video and seeing those guys, like, you know, it was like watching superheroes. It was like they were not of this earth. And like the riffs were great and the solos and the guitars looked awesome. And like from that moment on, like I was like all in, you know, and it was Motley Crue, and then it was every other band in that world. And that just, you know, just built and built and built. And then I started playing guitar and just got into all the shredders like Tom, and like, you know, it just became, it wasn't even like an interest. It was just a way of life, you know. It's like, it was just all I did, you know. And so here we are.
Now I get it, man. It all leads somewhere. It's funny with the early 2000s. That's when I was coming up with my bands, and we would do gigs in New York City, and we didn't fit in one bit. But then we would play up at the Chance in Poughkeepsie. We'd open them for Striper or Zebra, and we were like, boom! Now we're where we belong, you know.
Yeah,
you know, it's well past the prime of this type of music, but it's. I like in the book, like, even though some of the stories go to, you know, the real darker places of it all, the debauchery of it, this was happy. It was a happy time. It was happy music. And reading this book, it made me feel, especially during, you know, when the world is kind of upside down now, like, made me feel happy. So I don't know if that was a desired intention, but these stories, you know, coming from these guys, and just as a musician, understanding like the ride and what it was like to, you know, go cut a record in Europe, and then somehow someone found it in the import bin, and then you're getting signed here. Like, it was an existence as a musician that I don't know if a lot of up and coming kids are going through in the same way with streaming, and just, you know, you sort of throw something on SoundCloud and all of a sudden you're famous for a second.
Right.
I mean, one thing is, look, the bands that are in our book, right, are the ones who won the right. There are a lot of bands probably who didn't get the ride. That's one of the reasons I really love, and it was so good talk. You know, it was a really long interview with him, but like, I think Steve Brown from Trickster's perspective on the ride is so good. You know, this band that got signed late, so they really in the sort of in the era. And so they didn't really have, he's your neighbor, by the way, I think, pretty much. But they didn't have the time to have a second or third record. But here was a guy who was so totally, and he's exactly my age. So talking to him, and being that he was 18 and getting signed to, to Mercury and having the ride. Like and the cool thing about Steve Brown is that he knew he was having the ride while he was having the ride. So he's like, here I am. I'm making I got signed. I'm 18. I'm making a record. I'm on tour with Warrant. Like, I think he had this awareness because he was such a fan of the music that he was experiencing, like, that he had the brass ring, that he was living the dream that we all had. And like interviewing him like that, I'm actually getting tingles right now, because like that is exactly when I was 19 or 18 what I wanted. And to actually have know this guy and interview this guy who lived it, And then we made our second record, and we had a gold record, so we renegotiated it, and we spent $350,000. Like, that's what we all wanted, right? Like, I would like to spend as much time as I want, as much money as I want, making a record one day. So there is a real thrill, and even with the other bands, there's this level. The stakes are really high, and that's what I really, as a guy who records records now too, and I have a studio and all that stuff. The pressure and the stakes of like when Rat was making their second record, or, and these are kids, they're like 25, 26 years old. Like the record they're making, like the whole fourth quarter of Atlantic Records could be like hinged on it. Like, this was real. Like, when you succeeded in this world, like, you were really like making it, like you were selling millions of records. And that's a kind of, I think, a joyful thing. But like, it really was a completely different universe, like the scale that this was operating on.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why, again, this is such a cool, like, this is a reference almost. Like, this is something where people can use this to cite, this is how it was. These are the mistakes not to make. These are the things to look for. And then just a bygone era of just rock and roll, full blown rock star stuff. When I was looking through all of it, I read it while I was at the beach, and I'm reading. Yeah, it was a great. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's a great beach read, and again, it just cleared my mind. I actually had my first copy. Someone stole my beach bag, and they stole my book, and I was so freaking bummed. Then I was like, you know what? Like, that asshole. At least they got a cool book. I hope they take that part of it. Ditch my sunglasses, my towel. Take the book. When I do these interviews, I always try and, whoever winds up watching it, my students or just, the audience that you guys are going to bring in, I want to give them as much value as possible. So from the purely business side of things, as writers, and again, having, Guitar World and Revolver and just amazing, again, pinnacle magazines that, where you want your information, that's where you're going to go. I guess websites now, I keep saying magazines because that's where my brain lives. How do you get into that world? How do you, like, if you're looking for a story, like, where do you guys find the information? Is it all on spec? Are you pointed in a direction? Is that something we could talk about?
Yeah, I think, I think, and I'll just speak for myself, and maybe Tom feels the same way. It's a little hard for us to or a little hard for me to say, very specifically, because we also came up in a different time. Like, I interned at the magazine at Guitar World. I think Tom did initially too. I don't remember. And you just kind of worked your way up. But as far as the way it works, at least for me now, like, a lot of it is getting assignments and getting pitches that you then turn into your own pitches. It's a constant, if you want to do this, and especially if you want to like survive doing this. I mean, it's like a 24/7 thing. It's not, you don't have hours obviously where you clock in and out, and like you're constantly sort of toggling in this world where like you're writing something, but then you're also working on a larger book project on the side, and then you're also pitching this place, and like you kind of just have everything going at the same time. I mean, you're running your own business essentially, and you have to just, I'm okay doing that because I also love this stuff. But if I was, again, like just writing, about like, I don't know, anything, like if it was like business stuff or whatever the case may be, like to me, that's not interesting. So I don't know if I could keep that constant churn going. But I think to succeed in this world, whether it's music or writing about anything, it has to be something that you're willing to get into that constant churn. and that you're passionate enough about it that you can write the story at 2 a.m. if that's what needs to happen, and like, you know, and just keep going and keep going, and, you know, and like, and not really worry about the hours you're putting in, or not having a weekend or this or that, and just kind of do it because you love it.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to lift this computer for a second because it's for a visual. Do I have it here? No, I don't have it here. I recently ordered on eBay a copy of a 1996. I was the managing editor of Guitar World then. Interview I did with Metallica. It was the cover story of Guitar World, like right when they cut their hair to do Lollapalooza. And I got the magazine in the mail, and I opened it, and I was like freaked out because it was so heavy. Because Guitar World at the time had 4 tablatures in it. Like, remember that, you know, it was 190 pages. I think we were selling something like 250,000 copies a month. Like, it was so, like, Rich, I came into this sort of at a much different time where a magazine was something really necessary. I think that the thing that has to happen today, Rich and I were just talking about this before we did this podcast, is for journalists today, for better or for worse, like, writing is not like it's very, 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 very difficult to make a living just writing about stuff. And, you know, Rich is like one of the best guitar writers there is. So like he can do it. I think that it's really important in this day and age on some level you've got to create, for better or for worse, some sort of like cross-platform brand. Like, you probably have to be somewhat of a personality and also have, you know, be supplementing your thing with like a video component and this and that, and like creating you're probably doing it yourself for your school, you know, like you're creating a whole environment around what you do.
Exactly.
And, you know, so you're giving people, you know, and so like, I think that in order to do what we started doing now, you would probably have to create some sort of brand where you were also doing gear reviews and you see these things take off, especially like in the guitar realm. Since we're doing a music school, I feel okay, but you know, like I don't know if you've ever watched JHS pedals stuff, like this, you know, 200,000 people watch that, you know,
Josh's personality.
And it's a very difficult time because the artist when we were doing magazines, when we started, the artist needed the magazine to communicate to his or her fans. You needed the press to say to tell your story. And now the artist can tell the story directly to their fans. So therefore, a really important sort of utility of what a magazine or what the press was has been removed. So it is a very strange time. But I mean, you just have to work at it, and you have to be really good and really careful, and you'd be amazed if you turn in clean copy and don't make mistakes and get stuff in on time and don't end up annoying artists so that then their people call your people and they're like, you really can get ahead, because competence is much less widespread than you would believe. So like being really competent and a good hang is you've already got the edge. And people are always like, yeah, but what else? I'm like, that is the real secret. Be nice to people and can't do good work, and you will suddenly find yourself getting calls to do work.
I love that you just said that, because I think that's the secret to life. You know, over the course of this series, Steve Vai, you know, Richard Fortas, to every person I've talked to, one of the big questions is, how do you get these opportunities? Like I'm endorsed by PRS Guitars. I've had, you know, little blips of coolness, but nothing at that scale, right? And the same thing everyone says is the hang. You got to be cool. You got to do good work. And that's what's going to open those doors. So that's so validating to hear guys that produce something so awesome who were, I mean, my first Guitar World magazine was December 1996. It had Marilyn Manson on the cover. I just started playing guitar and I bought it because the cover looked cool. And then I bought every issue and subscribed until like mid 2000s. And it's having these resources, but to know that the people who were putting out that content were coming from such a, just be cool.
Was that the one where like Manson and Twiggy were like tied together with like rubber?
Yeah, I can grab it. Hold on.
Yeah, I worked on that. I'm probably the managing editor on that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. You changed my life. So thank you.
Yeah, I was definitely working there then. I think I was either the managing or the associate editor. I mean, and again, that was the secret of getting that. Like when you got a job there, Brad Tolinsky never looked at either of our college, like
transcripts. Yeah.
Transcripts. He just would hire. And when I started as an intern, and probably same thing for Rich, the first thing that I had to do, we might be getting off topic here, but whatever.
It's all good. This
is a time when writers would fax in their stories. I don't even know if your students know what a fax. It was like email, except it printed out. And my first job was typing back in these stories to faxes, and just the fact that I was actually willing to do that, and that I would then give it to them on a floppy disk, and that there weren't lots of mistakes in it. That's how I got the gig. And but Brad Tolinsky, who I'm sure you've read 100 of his editors' letters or more, that was the thing. He liked people who created a good environment, and he was adamant about that. And people who didn't last there, actually, it usually wasn't like as much of a performance issue as the fact that they were not, that the atmosphere at work was poorer, like that they were like, it was a bummer that they were a bummer.
Wow.
But it was a wonderful place. I got to say, Guitar World in the 90s and 2000s was a wonderful place to work.
Dude, it was my Bible. Whenever it came in the mailbox, like that was just like, don't talk to me for a day, because I'm going to just read this thing cover to cover and dream of all the gear. And just like, it was such a cool way to get turned on to, similarly to this, there was bands in here I was unaware of, and I was like, oh, they sound cool. Let me look them up. Same thing with the magazine like that. And I feel like now with social media and everything, when the artists are in charge of themselves, you're missing that opportunity to just have a bulk piece of content where you can learn new things, because it's just what's on the next story,
Yeah, I think so. And again, I don't know, people probably want a different thing nowadays too, and probably even to go back to your original question about, well, how would you do this job and be in this world now if you were coming up and you want to, and we're talking about it from the perspective of like, what would make you a good writer, what would make you present as a good writer to editors. But I don't even know that people coming up today would just be thinking solely of writing. They probably are, like Tom was mentioning, how you have to have this 360 view and video and all. Like, that's probably not even something that they need to be told. I don't know that anyone would come up and just think, I am going to write for a magazine or even just a website. Like they're coming at it probably from this kind of multimedia perspective to begin with. And which is a good thing, because I don't know how easy or how possible it really is to even just be a writer nowadays, especially if you're just starting out as that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And it's exciting to be able to digest things in these different ways, where you can listen to it, you can read it, you can watch it. I would like to take the last couple of minutes here. And again, thank you guys so much for your time. This has been I was so happy that this all worked out. And again, Rich, thank you for posting in Guitar World a couple of my interviews. That was a freaking dream come true. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask you guys, I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, so tell me if this is a bad idea, but I usually end these with a rapid fire series of gear questions, which I know has nothing to do with your book, but just it's musical kind of stuff. So it's like a this or that. Is that okay?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to ask, this thing or that thing. You don't have to justify your answer, but you can if you'd like to. That makes it more fun, and try your very best, though it's sometimes impossible, to say both. You can say neither, but try not to say both. All right? Here we go. Okay. And you can just yell them out if you like.
Actually, please direct it so we don't, because if not, like say Rich, because if not, we'll just step all over each other.
Okay. All right. So Rich first, humbucker or single coil?
Humbucker.
Tom?
Single coil at the moment.
Okay. Dude, I'm on a single coil kick too, so I get it. But for my entire life, it would have been humbucker.
I would actually amend it and say, because when I'm at home playing by myself, it's always single coil. But if I go out and play, it's always humbucker.
Okay, cool. See, that makes, all right, awesome. All right, Rich, Les Paul, Strat, or PRS style guitar?
SG.
Okay.
Can I say that? All right.
You can. Yep.
All right.
Okay. Tom?
Les Paul.
All right. If you had to pick a Fender style guitar, Rich, would it be a Strat or a Telecaster?
At the moment, probably Telly.
Okay. And Tom?
Telecaster all the way.
Cool. I just found I had in the like 2002, 3, 4, they did these limited runs of like this silver sparkle USA Telecaster, and I just was able to refine one on Reverb, and all my students were like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, yes, that's the point.
Exactly.
Okay. Rich, would you prefer a guitar with a tremolo or a non-trem?
Geez. Again, at the moment, probably trem. I would say again, when I'm home, I like to play with a trem, and when I am out, I don't need it. Like, just give me a hardtail and keep it in tune.
Yeah. Okay. And Tom?
I play in a comedy black metal band called Witch Taint. And in that, I'm all Floyd all day. But it's got to be a Floyd. If you're going to have a trem, just locking trem.
Yeah.
Life is too short to not have a locking trem.
I like that. All right. We'll switch our order now. Now, Tom, 24 frets or 22?
22, because I don't like where the 24th fret makes your neck pickup be. I think it makes it not round sounding enough.
And Rich?
22.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah. And the humbucker, like I have a custom 24 somewhere over here, and it just the neck is just in the wrong place. Everything's wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Tom, thin, medium, or thick guitar picks?
Oh, I'm currently on thick. I'm bouncing back and forth between Dunlop green and Dunlop blue. So that's like 1 and 1.13.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm really into the 3 ones, the pointy ones right now.
Oh, like the jazz.
Like it's the full size.
Yeah. I have one over here somewhere. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah.
What about you, Rich?
I'm a Dunlop green man as well, so I don't even know. That's like thick-ish, right? But not too thick. Yeah.
It's I just looked 0.88.
I'm a 0.88 man all the way.
I'm in love with these ones recently.
I love those. I love those. Yeah.
0.90.
Ultex.
Yeah. It doesn't slip out of my fingers. I sweat battery acid, so it stays in my head. All right, I'll just start jumping around because there's a ton of these. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Your fretboard, Tom, you want rosewood or maple?
I am still debating that. My current feeling is that I like both, but this is a long answer, but it's because I've really been thinking about it a lot. I think that maple is the ecologically responsible thing to do now, because you have no idea where that rosewood is coming from, and having some substitute like Pau Ferro just depresses me. So moving forward, maple whenever possible. And if it's a rosewood or ebony board guitar, I'm going to buy it used.
Cool. I like that. I like that answer very much, actually.
I mean, this is not as elevated an answer, I guess, as Tom's, but I mean, I spent my whole life playing rosewood, so lately I have been playing maple on my Strat and just enjoying that more just for the change, but I don't know if I prefer it overall.
Okay. No wrong answers. These are completely absurd questions. Don't worry.
These are this is what I spend most of my time thinking about.
This and White Lion is like
this and White Lion, like Vito Bratta
brain,
and Picks.
Yeah.
For your tubes, you like 6L6s or EL34? Tom first.
Depends on the application. When I'm playing in Witch Taint, I have a EVH head with 6L6s because I think they're tighter on the. I like EL34s. I think the sleeper tube which is in my 71 Super Lead, is the 6550.
Oh, I said that
because it's an it's one of those like there's a run of 71 Super Leads that like the American ones at 6550s, and I like that.
Okay. All right, well, that's on my list of things to look up now. Thank you for giving me something new to obsess about.
You learn
rabbit hole. Here you go. Here you go. Rabbit hole.
I guess I would, if I had to choose, I'd probably say EL34s, but I also don't, in all honesty, I don't care that much. Like, just plug in and turn it up. Like, I don't pay that much attention at that level.
Okay. All right, so I got 4 pedal related questions and then a couple bends. Thank you again for humoring me in this crazy, crazy series of horrible questions. It's about to get harder. Rich, if you could only pick one, delay or reverb?
Reverb.
Tom?
Just
one or the other?
Only one.
Reverb.
Okay. What about fuzz or overdrive? Like a fuzz face or like a tube screamer?
I mean, if I could only have one, I guess an overdrive, but fuzz is certainly more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Overdrive. Yeah, totally.
All right. Phaser or chorus?
Oh.
Phaser.
Okay.
Phaser.
It's like, do you want to be playing Atomic Punk more for the rest of your life, or She Sells Sanctuary? I don't know. Probably go with a chorus reluctantly.
Of all these questions, that is the most polarizing one for some reason. I don't know why. Like literally like defiant this, how could you even, versus like, oh, I don't know, my left arm or my right arm. Like, yeah. All right. And then there's a couple band related questions. The Beatles or the Stones? Tom first.
The Stones, while acknowledging that the Beatles are the more important and probably superior band.
Okay.
You said we can't say both, right? That's again.
I mean, the answer is both,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it purely depends on the moment. So.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, guys. We were going to talk about your book, and now I'm making you answer this.
No, that's okay. So long as you keep the book visible, we're fine.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right here. No, and you know what? I had a background where the graphic was in the background, but it wasn't saving as a PNG, so it wasn't the overlay, and like the video was happening, but it's here.
If you ever get that working, send it to us, and we'll start using it as well. Because that's
cool.
Cool.
No, it usually works, but StreamYard updated again, and they just changed all the stuff. So, but the link will be in everything. Everyone watching this, link it up. Amazon, all your local bookstores, support books and buy hard copies and smell them and read them and let people steal them at the beach and then buy a second copy.
Yes, that's buying the second copy is highly encouraged.
Oh, yes. That wasn't even a question. John or Paul?
Who's first?
Tom first.
John.
Okay.
I guess I'd say John, but I don't know. I like Paul too.
Okay. Yeah. 2 more. Zeppelin or Floyd? Rich first.
Zeppelin.
Tom.
Zeppelin.
Okay. I lied. 3 more. 1 more and then 1 more. Pearl Jam or Nirvana, Tom?
Ooh.
That's my only modern question. Modern 25 years ago.
Man, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna tighten this question. I think that I listened to 10 more than Nevermind, but I'm gonna say Nirvana because Smells Like Teen Spirit is still better than like any other. Like it's just the best. It's that song. The first time I heard that song, it absolutely is that it broke my head. So Nirvana.
Yeah. Fair. I would say, I mean, I was 15, 16-ish when all that was happening. And I would say, like, I've grown a greater appreciation for Pearl Jam over the years. But just thinking back to how monumental, again, like Tom was saying, Nirvana felt as a high school kid, like, it will always be Nirvana.
Can I add one other thing?
Yeah.
Because this is something you didn't have to go through. And Rich did, though, probably a little less than me. As a guitar, this is a very guitar thing. So there was a time, like 1992, 1993, where if you were a guitar player who had grown up in the 80s, you suddenly had to completely stop playing that way or you would never get another gig. Like if you sounded like an 80s guy. And I feel that like in a really cool way, like Mike McCready's guitar playing allowed some, like that he was like really still playing was like a great lifeline for a lot of us. And then like Pearl Jam sort of showed you a way through where you could be like, oh, I can still actually play guitar. And I thought, and that was much appreciated at that time where I was like, what do? I can't do anything that I learned how to do.
I use that analogy often because a lot of people talk when I'm showing people how to play songs, and I'm a Pearl Jam guy, but when I show someone how to play Smells Like Teen Spirit, they lose their freaking mind every time because it's just it's accessible and it's powerful, and then you kick on the distortion and everything changes. But you're totally right. I mean, McCready, what he was doing, there were still leads, and there were like shreddy leads in his own bluesy kind of way. All right, my very last question, gentlemen. Van Halen is Van Halen, and we love him and we miss him. But is it Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth?
To me first? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Do we really need to even go there?
yeah, I mean, Roth was my one regret in all of. Well, I have a lot of regrets, actually. That's a total lot. But one regret that I have is that when in 1984, I was 13 and I was like, Mom, let me go to see Van Halen. And that I never saw Van Halen with David Lee Roth. I saw David Lee Roth with Vi, which was awesome. But like, that is the one. And I didn't want to see it on the reunion. It's not the same thing. So I had, that is one big, Roth. That was the greatest band of all time.
Yeah.
That's the right answer. That's the only one that has a wrong answer. Right answer. So you guys win. You get the prize. I saw him on that last Kiss run. He sounded fantastic. So he's on moments, he can still be awesome.
Yeah.
He's still Dave. Dudes, thank you so much for this. I implore everyone, this book, everyone needs to check it out. It is on the coffee table at the school, so students have been flipping through it as they're waiting for lessons and being like, whoa.
How old are these students? Did you
I
black
have no
out
age
certain
range here.
pages? Or
Absolutely
okay.
not. No, they can. If they're old enough to read, they're old enough to understand rock and roll.
All right.
Excellent.
But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this and all you've done for music and this I appreciate also. So thank you and stay safe. And I wish you the best of luck and awesome. Enjoy.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Can I ask you a weird question? Please. Do you have like a complete collection of those?
I do.
You might have the only real existing archive at this point then, because like of the number of times the magazine got sold.
Really?
Yeah.
We might have to call on you.
We might have to call on you.
Yeah.
I have this
Seriously.
issue. I have this issue through the end of 2006. Everyone.
Nice. We might like we're cooking something up, so we might actually hit you for some research.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know where to find me.
All
cool,
right.
man. Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys. Thank you very much. Seriously.
Thank you, Rob.
Stay safe. Talk soon.
All right,
Bye.
bye.